Hi, I'm Konstantin Baum, Master of Wine, and today I'm going to show you how to save money while shopping for wine. I have spent a lot of money on wine on this channel in 2022, but not this time. It takes skill to find value wines that are not expensive but deliver bulk loads of quality, and I'm therefore going to show you how to identify these wines in order to make sure that you're not breaking the bank. All these wines in front of me together cost $100, and I'm going to taste them in order to verify whether they are actually great values. So let's go. These wines were selected by Leon, and while he usually has unlimited budget, within reason, I told him this time to spend less than $100 on all 5 of them. I realized that $100 for 5 bottles of wine is still a lot of money, but these wines should deliver quite a lot of value. And depending on the market you're based in, you will end up spending far less than $100 on all of them if you decide to buy them. Of course, value always has to be looked at in relation to where the wine is from. A $10 bottle of Burgundy is rarely as good as a $10 bottle of Portuguese wine, but it might offer great value in the context of its origin. In most cases, you find great values off the beaten tracks. Wines from unknown regions made by overlooked producers using hard to pronounce grape varieties tend to be much better values than the next Grand Cru Burgundy. But now let's dive into the wines. Before I continue with the tasting, I just want to say thank you for watching, but how about liking and subscribing this video if you haven't done so already? It really helps out the channel. It helps you learn more about wine, so it's a win-win for everyone. Thanks. The first wine is a sparkling wine, the Bouvet-Ladubay Cremant de Loire Excellence Brut, which retails, depending on where you are, at $19. So why did Leon pick Cremant de Loire? I actually believe that Cremant de Loire offers great value, especially if you're into champagne, and who isn't? These two regions are very close together geographically. Stylistically, they are also fairly similar. In Cremant de Loire, they use mainly Chardonnay and Chenin Blanc. Chenin Blanc is also a grape variety that is fairly neutral and that can bring quite a lot of acidity into the wine. And then the production methods are very similar as well. They use the traditional method, so they ferment the wine for a second time in bottles. So you also get these brioche, bready characters, which can just be beautiful. On top of that, Bouvet-Ladubay is actually one of the best producers in the region. They're fairly large, so you'll be able to find those wines in many different markets. And they actually produce great quality, especially when you look at the value. They're probably one of the best producers in France when it comes to value wines. So let's open this baby up. I hope I didn't take too long for the intro. The wine is still nice and cold, otherwise it might explode. So, well, let's see. I'm a pro, you know. So this wine actually has a beautiful mousse. There are lots of tiny pearls going up from the bottom of the glass to the top. But that's not super important. I mean, the smell and the taste are far more important compared to what it looks like. So the wine smells of oranges, pears. There's just a little bit of brioche character. So if you're not into that flavor, if you don't like champagne because it smells too much of baked goods, then this is more for you. On the palate, it's actually quite juicy, fresh. The acidity is not too high. It's really well balanced and there's good length there. So it's a really complete, more fruit-driven sparkling wine. Wine enthusiasts rated this wine 90 points, but I don't think that I can go that high. I would rate it 89 points, which is still a pretty good rating for a wine of that price. And I definitely think this is a great value wine. So wine number 2 is the 2021 Wittmann Riesling Estate Dry. And this is from Rheinhessen. And I think this is good quality because Riesling still is really good quality. It's often considered to be one of the best, if not the best, white grape variety in the wine world by wine critics or wine writers, but not necessarily by the general public. So prices are still reasonable in most cases. On top of that, Wittmann is one of the best producers in that region, and picking their entry-level wine is actually a very good strategy. If you're a great producer, you don't want to produce any bad wine, but you also need some entry-level wines in order to get people interested in your winery. So in many cases, the estate wines, the most basic wines from the top estates, are really good value. This one here retails for $23 and it's actually less than 14 euros in Germany. And it received 92 points from James Suckling and 91 plus points from Robert Parker. Sounds like good value, but let's try first. One day when I'm able to do this, I'll be like the coolest person ever. Damn it. Yeah, better than nothing. So this is super delicate, complex, and at the same time intense. It smells of tangerines. It smells of ripe lemons. It smells of really crunchy, delicious apple. It's very pure on the palate. It's very, very fresh, very lively, but it still has weight, even though it only has 11.5% of alcohol. So this is kind of the real deal. This is exciting for an entry-level wine. I think this could be, well, in a lineup with some much more expensive Rieslings from Germany and would still do really, really well. I mean, it's not the most powerful and most concentrated Riesling, but it has just the right balance. And I think at this price point, you can't go wrong buying this wine. I'm going to rate it 91 points. It's beautiful and really great value. So the next one is the 2021 Domaine de la Janasse Côte du Rhone Blanc. So why Côte du Rhone and Côte du Rhone Blanc in particular? I think Côte du Rhone still offers really, really great value for money. I think in Europe, it's one of the best places, one of the best AOCs when it comes to delivering quality for what you are actually paying. In some cases, those wines are pretty much declassified Châteauneuf-du-Pape, so they can be absolutely delicious, and they rarely cost much more than 10 euros or 20 US dollars in the US probably. So this is a Côte du Rhone Blanc, and Côte du Rhone Blanc is really overlooked. While most people know Côte du Rhone Red, Côte du Rhone Blancs can also be really beautiful, especially if done right by the right producer. And Domaine de la Janasse is one of the top producers in the region. So I'm looking forward to open this baby up. So this one is 50% Grenache Blanc and the rest is Clairette, Bourbon, Viognier and Roussanne. So it's a classic mix for the region when it comes to white wines. So the people at Domaine de la Janasse really know what they're doing. I actually have their top wine here somewhere. Let me check. Yeah, so this is the Chopin. This is their top wine. This one is from the 2012 vintage, but we're not going to taste this because this isn't really great value. Let's focus on this one. The white wines from the Rhone are often overlooked. I mean, there are some top wines that are really expensive, like White Hermitages, but most of them are really not all that expensive, and they can be really interesting, especially when the producer makes sure that the wine doesn't get too rich and concentrated. I want some acidity in my whites, you know? So this actually comes in at 13% alcohol, which is great. I think when they are 14 and a half, 15, then they're just too hot. So this isn't that. It has quite a lot of freshness, but it feels a little bit unripe. So on the nose, I get quite a lot of bruised apple and like the flavor of the core of the apple. So a little bit of bitterness, a little bit of harsh acidity. And then there's also a good body there. It's actually quite fun. So there's quite a lot of stuff going on in my mouth right now, but I don't think it's that great. Jeb Danak gave it 90 points and I don't think it's that good. I'm going to rate it 86 points. I think it's very good, but it's not extraordinary. In Germany, you would pay 13 euros for it. In the US, I believe it's around 22 US dollars. So at that price, I mean, it's still a value if you're looking for this style of wine, but I actually think that you might be able to find better wines in the same price category from Côte du Rhone, especially when it comes to the red wines, but also when it comes to the white wines. So yeah, it's good. It's very good. It's not the greatest value, but it's a good value. So we're moving on to red wines, and this is the 2020 Fratelli Revello Barbera d'Alba from Piedmont in Italy, and it retails for around 21 US dollars. I think Leon picked this because Barbera is a grape variety that can offer great value for money. Piedmont is getting more and more expensive. The top Barolos and Barbarescos can be really, really expensive. But Barbera still tends to be quite affordable. It's more like the workhorse grape variety, producing quite a lot of mass market wines that can be a bit thin and not really interesting. But if you handle Barbera well, then you can produce beautiful, juicy wines with great structure and great freshness. And I love really good Barbera. So let's see whether this one is all that good. I know that James Suckling gave this wine 91 points, but for a different vintage. So for the 2019 vintage, yeah, only one way to find out. Let's open it. Alba, the town this appellation is named after, is a beautiful place and a place that is also really well known for truffles, for white truffles. I actually went on a white truffle hunt last year and that was a lot of fun, especially eating those little tiny mushrooms. Really good. So this wine basically has two sides to it. The nose is really nice. It smells of ripe cherries and a little bit of spice, black tea, characteristics that I often associate with Barbera. It's quite pretty, very fruit driven. There's not oak influence that I could detect. And yeah, the nose is quite nice. On the palate, it's a little bit harsh, a little bit grippy. The tannins are a little bit too astringent. So yeah, I don't know. It's good. It's very good, but it's not quite what I was hoping for. I mean, tasting it again, it's actually quite well made. I must say that the astringency kind of threw me off, but it's not that present anymore. It's actually a juicy, intense wine, and the nose is developing more and more. So I think this is, well, all of this astringency will go away if you drink this wine over dinner, which you definitely should. So I'm going to rate it 89 points. I think it's really good. This retails for around 15 euros in Germany, 21 in the US. So it's a really good value. It's good value for sure. So the last one is the 2019 Kaiken Estate Malbec. And I think Leon picked this because, well, if you're looking for value wines, one of them certainly is Malbec from Argentina. Those wines tend to be fairly cheap in general, and they often over deliver. This one retails for $12 and let's see whether it's any good. Malbec actually used to be a grape variety that was a bit tricky to grow in France, where it originates from. But in Argentina, it's much easier because they have very reliable hot summers. So they definitely manage to ripen those grapes fully. And then they've learned how to handle it well. So it doesn't have the power and super intense tannins that you sometimes get from Malbecs from France. They tend to be a little bit more silky and velvety, which is something most people prefer. Not necessarily me. Sometimes I really like it when my gums get a good pounding. So the reasons why Argentinian wines tend to be quite cheap, I think there's a number of reasons. The first is certainly the cost of land. I think it's still quite inexpensive to buy land in Argentina. It certainly was a few decades ago. Then the cost of labor. I mean, it's much cheaper to hire somebody in Argentina than if you would do that in Europe or in the US. And the third is the size of the estates. So there are quite a lot of really big estates, and you just get economies of scale if you have a big vineyard and are able to produce lots of bottles. But another reason certainly also is the reliability of their climate, of their weather conditions. It tends to be, dry and warm in summer, so you don't really have to worry too much about autumn rains because they ain't gonna happen. Well, my job is really dangerous. Almost died there. Almost. So this one is actually quite a bit lighter than some other Malbecs that I've tasted on this channel, but it's still fairly dark. It smells of cassis and blackberries, and there's also oak influence here. Interestingly, at this price point, they still managed to age 40% of the wine in barriques. So you definitely get a little bit of that spice flavor coming through. On the palate, it's juicy and the tannins are round and polished. It's a good wine. I mean, it's a juicy, a little bit one-dimensional wine, but it's still good. So I'm going to rate this 86 points. I think it is a very good wine. I mean, it's enjoyable. It's not the most sophisticated wine, nothing to, think about really. It's just juicy, enjoyable red. I think many people will like this kind of wine, so it's definitely good. And at that price point, it's a really good value. So this was an interesting tasting, and it showed that great wine doesn't have to be expensive. Especially this one here, the Wittmann Estate Riesling, was just beautiful. And at that price, it's kind of a no-brainer. But also the other ones did do a really good job. I think in some of those categories, I would find better wines at a similar price. But still, I mean, they were all really enjoyable, so well done, Leon. So if you liked this video, then please like it down here, subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. My question of the day is, what is your favorite value wine? Let me know down below. I hope I see you guys again soon. Until then, stay thirsty.